The apple trees are blooming, so it's time to plant beans. No apples? Then look to the lilac. Also, if you're planting by the phases of the moon, the new moon has passed, and now the moon is waxing to full on June 5th. So that gives us 2 weeks to plant our above ground crops. Things like beans, squash, tomatoes, cukes, and peppers. So today we're planting beans. Whether you like bush beans or pole beans, both are very easy to grow, and it's not necessary to buy plants. They actually don't like to be transplanted because they have a taproot, and if that gets disturbed or damaged in any way, then they're not going to grow well for you. So it's just as easy to plant from seed. You'll find some have black seeds, some have brown, some have white, but they're all going to make a bean. So we're going to plant them 1 inch deep, which is up to your first knuckle, and like 3 to 4 inches apart. Very easy to do. They will germinate in 7 to 10 days because the soil is nice and warm now. To keep yourself in a steady supply of beans, it's best to plant a small amount every 2 weeks, and you can do that up until mid-July, and that way you'll have beans all summer long and into early fall until the frost kills them. No nitrogen is needed in preparing your soil because the beans are going to manufacture their own nitrogen out of the air. When you're watering your plants, it's important to try to keep the leaves dry as much as you can. This is why we use a drip irrigation, so that the water is going directly to the soil and not on the leaves. So it's best not to use one of those sprinklers, that just sort of sprays water everywhere. It's best not to touch your plants at all when they're wet. Like after it rains, let the leaves dry before you go into weed or to pick the beans, because if you work the plants while they're wet, then it tends to spread disease, and you don't want that. Your beans will be most prolific if you keep them picked. As soon as they start to form that bean inside the pod, then they're going to slow down and say, well, we've done our job for the year, we've made a new seed for next year, and they will stop producing. So keep your beans picked, and you'll have plenty of beans to last you all summer long. The pole beans are going to need support, so we've made a fence. So we've made a fence for our tall rattlesnake beans because they're good climbers. They climb by twining, so we sort of have to poke them through the fence here and there, and then they get the hang of the twine, and they will twine up this fence. But you can use bamboo poles or saplings that you've cut in the woods, and you can make teepees with 3 or 4 poles and plant around the base of each pole 3 or 4 seeds, and they will twine right up those poles. And that's a good way to support your pole beans as well. So fresh soybeans are called edamame, and they are a gourmet treat that you should definitely try. They're just as easy to grow as regular beans. Here's the seed. It's the same as the other ones. You're going to plant them 1 inch deep and about 3 to 4 inches apart, and they will have all of their beans all at once. So you will have a nice crop of soybeans to eat in the middle of the summer. They're good. You just pick the pods when the beans start to fill out the shell, and boil them in salted water for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then you pop them out of the shell. Don't eat the shell, just pop the beans out and eat them, and they're very good with a cold beer. In fact, there's even a variety that's called Beer Friend. Leave a few pods to dry on the vine, and that way you'll have soybeans for next year. That's what we do, and they actually germinate much better. The ones we've saved germinate much better than the ones that we buy. So cukes and squash, they can be started from seed very easily also. You can start them from plants, but again, you run the risk of having them be set back by when they're transplanted. It's always a bit of a shock to their system. So it's just as easy, and you'll get just as much squash and cucumbers if you just start from seed now. Because as plants, you might want to wait a little bit longer in the season before you transplant them. One reliable old-time method of planting your cukes and squash is to dig a hole every 3 or 4 feet in your garden, and then you're going to fill that hole 3/4 full with well-rotted manure or compost to give your squashes and cukes something to eat because they're heavy feeders. Then put the soil back on top, so then it forms like a little hill. And on top of that hill, you're going to make a nice flat place, and you're going to plant 3 to 5 seeds in a circle, and just keep doing that down your row. When the plants germinate, then you can train them to grow down each side of the hill, and that way they're not all in a big tangled mess in one place. They recommend that you thin it to 3 plants per hill, but you can grow more if you want. Just be aware that your winter squash is going to run and want to take over the whole garden, so try to plant it on an edge where it has room to run. Your cucumbers, you can actually grow them up a trellis if you want to save some space. They have little tendrils that will hook onto a fence, so they're very willing climbers. Plus, if the cucumbers hang down, they tend to grow straight instead of being crooked.
Okay. And
So you have a busy 2 weeks ahead, so get out in your garden and have fun planting.